Hi everybody, here we have, I'm going to do a marker demonstration, and what we have today here is, this is a sheet of bristle board. Bristle board is kind of thick, as I told you guys, so it feels more like card than it does like paper. It's more like card. So we have bristle board here, and I have two kinds of markers from two different companies. One of them is Chartpak, the other one Prismacolor. These are really nice markers. More expensive than your regular markers. The Chartpak has some fumes. I was telling you guys about fumes and how they can make you dizzy or give you a headache. Chartpak, the fumes are kind of strong, just like Sharpies. Sharpies are really strong too. The Prismacolor is not so bad. In addition to the markers, I also have this rag. A rag could be anything. This is an old t-shirt. You might need it if you want to test your, if you, just in case there's a stain or something, let's say, on your table. You're going to need a rag. When you're inking, you're going to need a rag more for whenever you're using India ink, for things like dip pens or brushes. So for markers, this is kind of optional. Okay, let's look at the markers. The Chartpak is, has one tip, and let's see if I can open this without making a mess. And the chip is tipped. And what that means is it's shaped like a chisel. I don't know if you can see that. It's kind of squared off at an angle. If you look at it from one end, it looks kind of like a round, like it's kind of sharp. And then when you look at it from this end, it looks like, just squared off. So that's chisel tipped marker. The other one has two heads, or two sides, two ends. One of them is more like a brush. It kind of looks like a brush. It's thick, but then it tapers off and it becomes thin at the tip, right? The other one is more of a fine, a fine one. So it's kind of neat. It's got a fine end here, which gives you thinner lines, and very conveniently you turn it around and you've got the thicker one here for whenever you need thicker lines or you need to blacken in things. Okay. So let's see what these guys do. Well, I'm going to start with, I'll start with the thin one. That one's easy enough. I'm just going to make some lines. So basically you can make lines this way, you can do some, this is called hatching. Hatching is when you're doing lines to make shading. And this is cross hatching because the lines are crossing one another. And, to make things a little bit darker. And then you can also choose another direction and go this way. Now markers you can use standing up and down if you want. If you do that, you're going to get a slightly thinner line. You can also make dots. This is called stippling. Okay, and of course you can also do outlines with them. You can do thick, thin. It really depends on the angle that the marker is in. So if I use part of the side of the marker, it'll give me a thicker line. But then as I start to use the point, it starts to get thinner. Now the brush side does something similar to that. So yeah, it'll give you a thicker line, as you can see. Okay. But you can also, if you hold it up and down, just like that, 90 degrees from the board, the bristle board, you're going to get a thinner line. You see that? And the lines are kind of neat because they can start thick and thin, or vice versa. Okay? You can do, I don't know if you could see it very well in the video, but some of them start thick and then end off thin, and the other ones are the opposite. So, and with this one too, you can also do cross hatching. The lines are different though. Line quality here and here is different. These seem a little bit more fluid because this one is trying to copy the dynamics of a brush. It's not a brush. It doesn't do exactly the same things as a brush, but it's trying to copy that. This one is chisel tipped, and this one is interesting because you can do all that as well. If you hold it where you're not using this side is up, right? You can see that. Then you can make thin lines too. You see that? Cool thing though is if you turn it around, okay, and you use it like this, you can make very thick lines. You can blacken in an area very quickly, right? You can also use them together. So by doing this, you know, like a sweep, you can start thick and then end thin. Or, you know, let's change the angle. If you change the angle, it's the opposite. You start thin and end off thick. There's a lot of things you can do with these markers. I think, from my experience, they are not as versatile as a dip pen or a brush, but sometimes that's all we have. The advantage that they have is that you don't need to carry around a bottle of ink. And you know, if you're out in the park, if you're out somewhere and you don't have access to a bottle of ink, these are very convenient, right? So so that's with the markers, the best advice I could give you. Well, first of all, these are permanent, so be careful with your clothes. Like, I don't want to get it on my shirt or anything like that. And you know, also on other things, anything that's absorbent, you know, like let's say the carpet, or I don't know, anything that will, you know, absorb this marker, it'll be hard to wash off, maybe impossible. So be careful. The same thing with India ink. Now, the thing I suggest for you to do is to experiment and make all kinds of marks. Right here we only have a few. You can actually make all kinds of marks with these. If you're able to get a thick marker and a thin marker, and let's say one that has a chisel tip like this one did, or this one does, versus a brush, which is this one, try to see how they're different. Try to see how you can make different kinds of marks with them. Okay? Now there's one more thing I want to show you, and it's I'm going to use the markers to do some lettering. Today in this last class we were talking about lettering and calligraphy and how that's related to comics. So here I have this little mock-up of let's see if you can see it. I don't know if you could see the guidelines. What I did was, with a pencil and a ruler or a T-square, I ruled in guidelines. And these are the guidelines we talked about in class. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In comic book lettering, usually we only need 2, and I'll talk about that in class. But when you're doing actual real calligraphy, let's say, you're going to be using up to 5 different lines, and they all have different uses. They're guidelines to show you where certain elements of the letters go. Okay, so here I have the word calligraphy, and I'm going to try to letter it with this chisel tipped marker. Now, it's got a little bit weird for me because I need to. Here, let me see if I can sit down next to the camera without. Anyway, I'm in a strange position right now. That's another thing. When you're doing this, you definitely want to be as comfortable as possible. You need to try not to slouch, because if you're doing this for a long time, let's say for 1 or 2 hours, if you're slouching, it's going to hurt your back after a while. So right now I'm kind of doing what I'm telling you not to do, which is be comfortable. So I'm standing up. I'm going to see if I can do this without making it look too bad. So basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to use the chisel of this marker to give me different thicknesses and thinness of the lines. So here's a C for calligraphy, and okay. Now, one of the bad things about this marker with this bristle board is that I don't know if you guys can see it on the video, but it's bleeding out. It has a tendency to bleed out a little bit. So it's not as clean as if you were using a dip pen for this kind of thing. But some papers won't do that. For some reason or other, this bristle board is doing that with this marker. All right, let's try the A. So again, we start thin, finish thick. That's not a very good one. And I'm using the ascenders and descenders that we were talking about in class to guide me for things like L's, which are taller. Is not a really good example. Which are taller than, let's say, the capital C. Here's an I, G, and then this lower guidelines showing me where to put the descender for the G. And here's an A. Oh man, I forgot the R. Well, that's another thing. You want to spell check your calligraphy. Calligraphy. Yeah, I forgot the R. I don't want to forget any other letters. Now we have calligraphy. And again, the descender. Okay. Now this is a really bad example, and I'm sorry about that. A couple of reasons why. One, I'm rusty. Another reason is because I'm uncomfortable. I'm not in a comfortable position because of the tripod on the camera. But one of the main reasons too is the bristle board and this marker are not working very well together. Let me try this marker. Maybe this marker doesn't give as much ink, so it won't bleed as much. I'm gonna just do it freehand. I'm not gonna do the guidelines. I'm just gonna do it down here and see if I can come up with something a little bit better. So here we go. Let's see, calligraphy. This is not going to give me much variation unless I hold it this way. Here, let's try it again. Maybe if I go a little bit smaller. Here, I'm going to try a little bit smaller. Okay. One of the things about doing calligraphy, now I'm not giving you a really good example, but one of the things about doing calligraphy is that you're not going to do a finger movement. When we're writing, we're doing this. We're using our fingers a lot to do cursive writing. Or sometimes we're using our hand. So maybe you'll do this, right? Some people do, most people don't. They just use the fingers. When you're doing calligraphy, you want to do an arm movement. When you're pulling down on the L or the I, your whole arm, your elbow is actually moving on actually all the letters. Because if you don't, then the letter forms don't look quite right. That's the R. I didn't forget it this time. And that's it. So again, not a really good example. I'm not much of a calligrapher, to be honest with you, even though I tried it in the past. Tried studying it a little bit, but this is the best you're going to get from me today. But you're getting the idea, right? Now, in calligraphy, as I say in class, it's really good practice to be able to control your inking. When you're actually inking a drawing with markers or whatever, you know, that kind of control that you can get in calligraphy will help tremendously, because a lot of the same marks that you're making with ink, you know, in calligraphy are going to, you know, translate into inking. Anyway, that's it for today. Next time I will show you how to use actually how to use the India ink. India ink with a sable brush and India ink with a dip pen. And then that'll be, you know, so that way you can get an idea about what a lot of the pros use. Okay? Anyway, we'll see you in class. Bye.